Hey fellow music fans, welcome back to Psychology of Rock, where we take deep dives into the philosophy and psychology behind the artists and songs that rock the world. My name is Nina, if you're new here, and today's video is in response to the very many of you who requested that I do an analysis of the five-piece family rock and metal band Liliac. Now, truth be told, I was already a fan of the band before I got this request. I had found them one day when I was watching a Dio video, and their video for Holy Diver got recommended to me. I love that song, so I clicked on the video and my jaw just dropped. I just couldn't believe how well they handled the song and how young they were. So I wanted to look them up and get some more information about them, and I have been following them ever since. So today I want to offer my honest analysis of the band, as well as discuss what I believe to be the psychology behind their rising success, which is something that I actually gave a lot of thought to even before getting this request. So I do have a lot to say about that, and I also want to talk about what I feel is their ability to reinvigorate enthusiasm for the future of rock. So I'm going to start with a quick biography just in case you aren't yet familiar with the band, and then I'm going to move on to my analysis. But before we start, just a quick request to subscribe to the channel if you have not yet done so. And also, I would love to hear your thoughts. I know there are a lot of dedicated Liliac fans out there, so I'd love to hear how you heard about them and also what makes you so drawn to them. And with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in. So who is Liliac and why are people so excited by them? Well, like I said before, Liliac is a five-piece band that plays rock and metal music. But what makes them interesting is that they are all siblings and they are all incredibly young. In fact, I believe at the time of making this video, they are between the ages of 14 and 22 years old. So starting from oldest to youngest, we have Samuel on lead guitar, Abigail on drums, Melody, who is the lead singer, Ethan, who plays bass, and Justin, who plays the keyboard. They are the children of Romanian parents, and in fact, the word Liliac means bat in Romanian, which is of course the perfect name for their theme and for their sound, which is self-described as Vamp Metal. It was the father, who goes by Papa Liliac on social media, if you want to follow him, he's a lot of fun, who really envisioned the band and gave the kids all instruments to learn. And I want to mention here that although Melody does not currently play an instrument in the band, she is a seasoned musician herself. She does play bass as well as other instruments. So all of the children really took the time to master their own instruments, and all turned out to be incredibly gifted. So starting at a very young age, they were able to truly become a band. So they were able to start performing. They would perform shows every single weekend on the Santa Monica Pier. They performed covers by Dio and Metallica, Iron Maiden, and Black Sabbath, and people were really into it. So they started to record the shows and put the clips on social media, where they ended up going viral. So after that, they started to create their own kind of video clips, and then decided it was time for them to begin to create original music. So they went into their home studio and recorded the EP Chain of Thorns, which came out in 2019, and then followed up with a full-length album called Queen of Hearts, which came out in 2020. And their popularity has just continued to grow from there. Recently, they have been touring extensively. They have released a bunch of new cover songs, as well as a new original song that's up on YouTube called Not Afraid. Something that I noticed immediately about this band is how very dedicated their fan base is. They call themselves Liliac Fangs, and they are not only very excited about the band, but they are very, very loyal. If you look at posts by the fans on social media, you see over and over and over again people saying that Liliac's music has reawakened their love of rock and metal music. And even some people say that their music helped them to get through the pandemic. But we can clearly see that it goes beyond just kind of being a casual listener. And when you have that kind of dedicated following, it really is the golden ticket, because that's something that you cannot fake. In fact, there have been many hugely successful artists that failed to be able to connect with their audience in that way, and eventually did become obsolete. So that connection is one of the secret ingredients to having a long career and for maintaining continuing support from your audience. So that begs the question, why are people so dedicated to Liliac? How are they setting themselves apart? Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this, with the first and most obvious one being that they are truly all masters at their own instrument, and there is no question that there is talent there. So starting with Abigail, who I know is a fan favorite, she is an incredibly fierce drummer. She is also a joy to watch. She is always smiling and she is enthusiastic and very, very engaging. And Samuel is just an impeccable guitar player. He has outstanding timing. He is very precise and he plays impressive and very satisfying solos. But I think a lot of credit really needs to go to Ethan and Justin. I think they are truly talented beyond their years. Yes, they are young, but they are holding their own, and the band would not be the same without them. But still, no band can succeed, no matter how talented the musicians are, if their frontman or frontwoman is not fantastic. And thankfully for Liliac, this is where they really shine. Melody is sheer perfection on vocals. Her power and her range are simply unmatched. Whenever I hear her sing, I think to myself, well, this is what rock should sound like. And it seems like her performances are only getting better and better and better. It is amazing to see this young woman pull off these harsh, raspy, full-throated sounds so incredibly well. It is unexpected and it grabs you the second you listen. And on top of that, she just has this stage presence that makes it impossible to look away. She is truly captivating. In fact, the whole band really has incredible stage presence. You can tell that they have been playing shows for years and years and years. And since music now has such a strong visual component, this is something that really is going to continue to set them apart. Another thing they have going for them is the surgical precision they have used when selecting their cover songs. They knew what they were doing, they knew what people wanted to hear, and this has been very important to their success for a lot of reasons. There is a lot of psychology behind this. Firstly, these songs have served as teachers to them, so in a sense, they are learning from a master every single time they rehearse these songs or they perform these covers. And with Liliac, this is just so visible. We can take a look at Melody and see that she doesn't just sing in Dio style. She has meticulously studied Dio styling down to his breath control, to his phrasing, all the way down to his hand movements and even his facial expressions sometimes. So this has really served her well. Melody cites Dio as being her inspiration as well as her biggest influence, and what a smart choice, because nobody can sing like Dio. He is the best of the best of the best. No one can even compare to him except Melody. She is really holding her own. Not only that, she's also able to really transfer that sound and these stylings to their other music in such a masterful way. And I really think that Dio would be extremely impressed by her vocals. But something deeper than just training also happens when a band performs covers psychologically for the audience. Now, if the cover is good, and every single one of Liliac's covers is very, very good, there is an immediate transfer of the emotional connection that the listener has with the original song and the original artist. Now, I'm not saying that the connection switches from the original artist to the cover artist, but it does become shared. And in cases where the original artist is deceased, that is even stronger, because we feel like we have a new connection to that artist, that we have a little piece of them that's still with us. And that's exactly how I felt when I heard them doing the Dio covers. It's like the next best thing. It's a gift to hear this music again, especially when it's done just so well. But there's also another very unique factor that's happening here, which is that there is a gender difference, which is truly an asset, because it allows it to feel more like a tribute than forcing an audience to make an apples to apples type of comparison between the cover artist and the original artist. If the singer of the band had been male, it could have made people feel that they were trying to outdo or replace Dio, but having Melody be a female really takes that right out of the equation. I think that allows the performance to be met with love and appreciation appreciation as opposed to maybe feeling like someone was trying to step into someone else's shoes. I want to add, however, that I don't think a gender switch always works in covers. I think sometimes it can be a distraction, but I don't think that it is in Liliac's case, because Melody's voice has such depth and such grit that it feels like it really works for songs by either gender. So I really feel that starting with these cover songs was so important to their success on so many different levels. So whether or not it was intentional, it turned out to be a truly brilliant strategy. But now I want to address the big questions. Are Liliac going to be able to make it into the mainstream, and what is in store for their future? Well, I do think they have a few obstacles in their way, but I also think that they are going to be able to gracefully overcome them, and I absolutely feel that they have a very bright future ahead of them. So what are the potential issues? What are the obstacles that they may have to kind of work around? I think the first thing is that they are children, or many of them are still children. And while that was a draw for me personally, it's not necessarily going to be something that everyone finds appealing. There are going to be those people who feel that rock and kids don't really mix and may not take them seriously until they get a little bit older. However, I find it very encouraging that most people do tend to give them a lot of credit for getting out there at their age. They admire them for that and really cheer them on. And it's also very interesting that so much of their fan base does tend to be people who are older as opposed to people who are their own age. So that could mean that this is a barrier that they have already worked around. And it's almost endearing. If you read through again those comments in social media, you can see that many people feel almost like second parents to them. They do not stand for any criticism of the band at all. They are very, very protective over the members of this band. So I think that it shows right there that they really have pushed past this, as well as the fact that they are getting older and they won't be seen as children for much longer. And I also think that being so young was one of the factors that really helped them to stand out in the first place. This is something that is always mentioned in interviews or when they perform on competition shows and things like that. People are always amazed that they can pull off this kind of sound at such a young age. So I think that's something that's very noteworthy as well. Another thing that could potentially stand in their way a little bit is people may assume that there is a cheese factor there because they are siblings. There is maybe a little bit of a disconnect between the concept of rock and metal with the idea of a family band. We think of bands like the Partridge Family or, the Osmonds, and we don't really think that these are bands that are really going to rock. And of course, there's just always going to be some people who don't like the idea of rock having any kind of wholesome quality at all. But I do think there are so many people that seem to really enjoy this combination and think it's a really fun concept. And in the end, I do think it's actually more of an asset than being something that's going to turn out to be a true obstacle for them. Something else that could end up being a little challenging for them is just making sure that their original music is as engaging as these masterful covers that they always perform. When they are performing a live show and they have all this energy and enthusiasm, from hearing these covers, you want to make sure that your original music gets the same reaction, the same response. So there is a lot of pressure on them because they really set the bar very high for themselves. Now, in the case of Liliac, I feel that they have been able to write really solid original music, and that's going to be very, very important to their continued success. And we all know that songwriting really is a very different skill than performing, so it's something that I think they will continue to grow at. And I think that this particular aspect or this particular challenge is not going to be something that stands in their way. Another potential obstacle could be the risk of losing some fans by straying away from from the original formula or the original look and sound of the band. I think for many years they were very narrow in their approach of picking songs that were all very, very similar and appealed to a very similar audience. There was something that was very distinct about all these selections, and it went perfectly in line with how they looked as well as their overall theme and their sound. But lately I have noticed that they have started experimenting with both their look and their sound, which is something that has seemingly made some people a little bit uneasy. I think people were really into that original concept of it being truly vampire metal. They loved that look, they loved the theme, so there was kind of a little bit of an uproar when they started to stray from that. I remember when Melody cut off her hair and started wearing, you know, clothes that weren't always black or purple. She started wearing white and pink and Isis wings and, you know, experimenting with her personal style, and people were very vocal in a lot of cases about wanting her to go back to that original look. And we have to remember that artists are, you know, free to express themselves. They are in a time of development, especially this band, because they are very young, and so it's natural for them to want to experiment with their look and their sound. So it's interesting that there was such resistance. So that is something that could potentially set them back a little bit, because there could be this divide between people who want them to stay true to their roots and other people who want to, you know, continuously watch them grow. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about both their appearance and their sound. So for example, one of their newer covers is Seven Nation Army. I think it's one of their strongest covers, and I actually think that the cover is better than the original song. I think it is absolutely phenomenal. But because the original song is by alternative artists as opposed to true metal or rock artists, I'm curious to hear whether or not it was met with the same enthusiasm and the same appeal, because the song itself is incredibly solid. I'm wondering if people were okay with that kind of veer into that direction, or if they really do want them to stay on that much more narrow path. And the last potential obstacle is only that they are completely independent artists that are not backed by a major label. So they are completely reliant on the financial support of fans through, you know, their album sales and their merchandise sales and through platforms like Patreon. But the good news is that I don't think that fans will ever become any less enthusiastic. I also think their fan base will continue to grow. And there is also the potential that they will get signed by a label if that is something that they are interested in doing, because the talent is definitely there. But going back to the psychological side of this analysis, I do want to mention that there is a huge protective factor here that will likely keep them from facing a lot of the negative consequences that other bands face. Many artists end up leaving the scene because they face isolation or mental health issues, or they really can't get along with other people in the band. But here we are talking about a family, and not just a family that truly supports one another, not just the siblings, but also the parents. I have never seen such strong support. It is truly, truly amazing. I also think that simply being surrounded by people you love is such an asset, because it keeps it fun, and you know, it's going to keep you going on those days that you do feel low, or you do see something on social media that you don't like, or something like that. You have that support that's truly surrounding you that so many different artists are unfortunately lacking. So I think that's going to end up being a huge asset for them. So if I had to sum this all up, I'm going to say that it is Liliac's unique blend of nostalgia, skill, and innovation that are going to end up being their keys to success. And do I think they are going to continue to be successful? Yes, I absolutely do. I think they have an incredibly bright future ahead of them, and I look forward to all they are going to accomplish. So those are my thoughts on Liliac, but I would love to hear yours, so please don't forget to leave a comment below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. I truly hope you enjoyed today's analysis, and I will see you next week.